Texas was once promoted as the ultimate destination for remote workers, investors, and families fleeing the high cost of living in coastal states. But the reality emerging on the ground today tells a very different story. The so-called Texas economic miracle is beginning to show serious cracks under the pressure of soaring property taxes, elevated mortgage rates, and an enormous oversupply of newly built homes. Taking a closer look at 10 Texas cities experiencing significant population outflows and housing market stress reveals where the state's real estate boom is now struggling to sustain itself. Examining these markets provides a sobering picture of local economies that are losing momentum, exactly the kind of information prospective buyers need before committing to a 30-year mortgage in an area facing declining demand. Understanding what's happening in these rapidly weakening housing markets could prevent homebuyers from making one of the most expensive financial mistakes of their lives. The sight of thousands of newly constructed homes sitting vacant creates a striking image of a building boom that dramatically overestimated future demand. Before we begin, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments, subscribing to the channel, and liking this video to help others discover this information. Now, let's hit the road and take a closer look at where the Texas dream may be starting to come apart. Number 10. Frisco. Driving into the northern edge of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, it's easy to understand why so many people believed this region represented the future of suburban prosperity. Towering corporate offices, upscale shopping centers, and meticulously planned developments create the image of a community where growth and wealth would continue indefinitely. But once you look beyond the toll roads and polished commercial districts, a very different reality begins to emerge in many residential neighborhoods. During the pandemic housing boom, Frisco became one of the most recognizable examples of high-end suburban expansion. Remote workers, technology professionals, and corporate employees flocked to the area, attracted by larger homes, newer communities, and the promise of a better quality of life. Today, however, the economic environment that fueled that rapid growth has changed dramatically. For many homeowners, the financial burden has become increasingly difficult to manage. Rising property assessments have pushed tax bills higher, while elevated mortgage rates have reshaped the economics of buying and owning expensive suburban homes. According to recent housing market data from Realtor.com, active housing inventory in the area increased by approximately 45% over the previous year. During the height of the boom, developers aggressively expanded construction, building large four-bedroom homes across vast master-planned communities. Now, many of those newly completed properties remain unsold. Recent reporting by the Dallas Morning News has indicated that new home contract cancellations in parts of this region have approached 20%, leaving builders with substantial inventories of completed and unfinished properties. Walking through some of these newer subdivisions today can feel strangely surreal. Streets are quiet, homes sit vacant, and many sellers are facing increasing pressure to lower their expectations. Data reported by Redfin suggests that median home prices in the area have fallen by nearly 8% from their peak levels, dropping well below the $700,000 threshold. For a city that built much of its reputation on continuous appreciation and rapid growth, this adjustment has been particularly difficult to accept. Many residents are now choosing to relocate because the financial calculations that once justified moving to Frisco no longer appear as favorable. When combined with local property tax rates that can approach 2%, as documented by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts, carrying the cost of a high-priced home can become a significant financial burden. Number 9. McKinney. Just a short distance east of our previous stop lies another community that illustrates the risks of rapid suburban expansion. For years, McKinney attracted new residents with its charming historic downtown, family-oriented reputation, and reputation for offering a quieter alternative to the larger cities of the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. Yet beyond the picturesque town square, an enormous wave of residential construction was quietly transforming the surrounding landscape. Today, driving along the outskirts of the city reveals a striking scene. Large numbers of newly built homes and master-planned communities stretching across former farmland, with many properties still waiting for buyers. During the housing boom, developers expanded aggressively, building new neighborhoods on virtually every available tract of land. The challenge now is that the pace of homebuyer demand has slowed dramatically. According to data from housing analytics firm Zonda, new construction inventory in this market has increased by more than 50% compared with historical norms. In response, builders have been cutting prices, offering mortgage rate buydowns, and introducing increasingly generous incentives in an effort to reduce inventory. However, these measures have had only limited success. Many prospective buyers are hesitating because of long commute times, rising ownership costs, and growing concerns about affordability. For existing homeowners, the financial pressure has become increasingly difficult to ignore. Data from the Collin County Central Appraisal District indicates that property tax assessments have risen substantially over the past several years, leaving many households facing dramatically higher annual tax bills. For homeowners, the experience can be especially frustrating. Monthly housing costs continue rising while home values themselves are experiencing downward pressure. Market data published by Zillow has shown median listing prices declining by approximately 6% year over year, bringing typical asking prices to around $520,000. The situation has created an uncomfortable paradox. Communities that were once marketed as affordable alternatives to urban living have become increasingly difficult for many families to afford. It raises difficult questions about whether the pace of development significantly outpaced the long-term purchasing power of the market. Number 8. Denton. As we continue north, we arrive in a city that, historically, might have been expected to weather housing market turbulence better than most. College towns often benefit from a more stable economic foundation thanks to their universities, student populations, and diverse local economies. But the situation unfolding in Denton suggests that even those advantages have their limits. Known for its vibrant independent music scene, creative culture, and large university population, Denton has long attracted students, artists, educators, and families seeking a distinctive alternative to larger metropolitan areas. Today, however, many residents argue that the city's unique character is increasingly being overshadowed by rapid development and rising housing costs. Across the city, new apartment complexes and large suburban developments have transformed parts of the landscape at a pace that has left some longtime residents feeling disconnected from the community they once knew. At the same time, the gap between local incomes and housing costs has widened significantly. According to data published by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, renters in the area may need to earn more than $25 per hour to comfortably afford a typical two-bedroom apartment. Yet many of the industries that have traditionally supported the local economy, including education, service work, and hospitality, often provide wages that fall well below that threshold. As housing affordability pressures increase, some longtime residents have chosen to relocate to areas with lower living costs. Meanwhile, during the height of the housing boom, developers invested heavily in new residential construction, anticipating continued demand from remote workers and out-of-state buyers. In some cases, that expected wave of demand did not materialize as anticipated. Recent market analysis from CoStar Group has indicated that multifamily vacancy rates in portions of the area have risen above 12%, prompting some property owners to offer incentives such as several months of free rent in an effort to attract tenants to newly completed developments. The challenges extend beyond the rental market. Data from the Texas A&M Real Estate Center indicates that active housing listings have increased by more than 60% over the past year, reflecting a significant shift from the highly competitive market conditions seen during the pandemic housing boom. Number 7. Conroe. Traveling south through the pine forests north of Houston, you arrive in a city that embraced rapid growth with extraordinary enthusiasm. Just a few years ago, Conroe was celebrated by the U.S. Census Bureau as one of the fastest-growing cities in the country, a distinction that encouraged developers and local planners to accelerate construction at a remarkable pace. Today, however, the consequences of that expansion are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The scale of development becomes apparent as soon as you drive through the area's sprawling network of master-planned communities, many of which still contain partially completed neighborhoods and large numbers of unsold homes. What once appeared to be a blueprint for unlimited growth now raises questions about whether construction significantly outpaced long-term demand. According to market analysis from housing research firms such as Metro Study by Zonda, the Houston metropolitan area, and particularly this northern corridor, has accumulated a substantial inventory of newly constructed homes. During the housing boom, builders rapidly expanded production, constructing thousands of entry-level and move-up homes based on the expectation that a continuous stream of buyers would be willing to relocate and commute into the greater Houston area. That assumption has proven increasingly difficult to sustain. For many residents, the daily commute along Interstate 45 has become a major quality of life concern, and some prospective buyers have become less willing to accept the trade-offs associated with living farther from employment centers. Meanwhile, existing homeowners are facing their own financial challenges. According to housing market data published by CoreLogic, median home prices in parts of the area have declined by approximately 5%, falling to around $330,000. While those prices may still appear affordable compared with major coastal housing markets, many local households continue to struggle with rising ownership costs, particularly when property taxes and insurance expenses are taken into account. Homeowners have also experienced significant increases in insurance premiums. Recent information published by the Texas Department of Insurance has documented substantial increases in property insurance costs across parts of the state, placing additional financial pressure on many families. As a result, some working and middle-income households are finding it increasingly difficult to maintain the cost of home ownership. Number 6. Georgetown. Traveling toward the Texas Hill Country, we arrive at a community long celebrated for its picturesque downtown square, often considered one of the most beautiful historic districts in the state. For decades, Georgetown built its reputation as a peaceful retirement destination and a quieter alternative to the rapidly growing urban centers nearby. Then came the pandemic housing boom, and everything changed. As demand surged across central Texas, developers rapidly expanded construction throughout the surrounding hills and open land. What had once been a relatively tranquil landscape quickly transformed into a patchwork of new subdivisions, large residential developments, and increasingly congested roads. The pace of growth was so intense that many observers now argue it fundamentally altered the local housing market. According to data published by the Austin Board of Realtors, active residential inventory in the surrounding area increased by more than 80% year over year, leaving many newly built neighborhoods with a significant number of vacant homes. During the height of the boom, developers operated under the assumption that the migration of high-income buyers and technology workers from nearby metropolitan areas would continue indefinitely. Instead, as mortgage rates increased and market conditions shifted, many prospective buyers postponed or abandoned their purchasing plans, leaving builders to complete homes for which demand had weakened substantially. The consequences have been especially difficult for longtime residents. Families who have lived in the region for generations have faced rising housing costs, increasing property taxes, and growing concerns about affordability. According to market data reported by Zillow, median home prices in the area climbed above $450,000 before the market began to cool. Since then, conditions have changed considerably. Data published by Redfin indicates that nearly 40% of active listings have experienced price reductions as sellers attempt to attract buyers in a much more competitive market. For homeowners who purchased near the market peak, the experience has been particularly challenging. In some neighborhoods, large numbers of homes remain unoccupied, creating an atmosphere that contrasts sharply with the optimism that characterized the market only a few years ago. Housing isn't the only source of concern. Number 5. New Braunfels. Situated along the heavily traveled Interstate 35 corridor, New Braunfels has become one of the clearest examples of what can happen when rapid growth outpaces long-term planning. Once known primarily for its strong German heritage, scenic rivers, and relaxed summer atmosphere, the city has undergone a dramatic transformation over the past several years. What was once a charming destination for tubing, festivals, and small-town living has increasingly become a landscape dominated by construction sites, expanding subdivisions, and non-stop development. The strategy appeared to be simple: build as much housing as possible while demand remained strong. Today, however, the consequences of that approach are becoming increasingly difficult to overlook. The sheer amount of new housing inventory entering the market has reached levels that many local observers find concerning. According to data from the San Antonio area real estate market, the supply of available homes has climbed to levels not seen since the years following the Great Recession, surpassing the 4-month inventory threshold that often signals a cooling market. During the height of the housing boom, developers moved aggressively, constructing large residential communities with the expectation that population growth would continue indefinitely. Yet many of those neighborhoods now contain homes that remain vacant, sitting under the intense Texas sun with little indication of immediate demand. At the same time, the cost of living in New Braunfels has risen far beyond what many local residents expected. Market data indicates that median listing prices have remained around the $410,000 range, a figure that many argue no longer aligns with the wages typically found in a local economy, heavily dependent on tourism, hospitality, and service sector employment. Property taxes have added further pressure. Rising assessments and local tax obligations have created growing financial challenges for many middle-class households, forcing some families to reevaluate whether remaining in the area is financially sustainable. For residents, the frustration extends beyond housing costs alone. Increasing traffic congestion, crowded roads, and rapid population growth have changed the character of daily life. For some, the reality of working long hours while facing rising housing expenses and worsening traffic conditions has become increasingly difficult to accept. According to housing market data, a significant percentage of homes currently listed for sale have required price reductions in order to attract buyers. Number 4. Galveston. Heading south toward the Gulf Coast, the ocean breeze and historic seawall still create the image of a classic Texas beach destination, a place associated with weekend escapes, vacation homes, and coastal charm. But beneath that postcard-perfect scenery, a much more troubling reality is unfolding for homeowners and investors. Today, Galveston is experiencing a growing residential retreat driven not only by economic pressures, but also by the increasingly staggering cost of owning property in a region vulnerable to hurricanes and coastal flooding. The insurance situation in particular has become one of the biggest challenges facing residents. According to recent state insurance data, premiums for windstorm and flood coverage have risen dramatically in many coastal communities, with some homeowners seeing their annual insurance costs double or even triple over a relatively short period. For many longtime residents, the financial burden has become overwhelming. Imagine finally paying down a mortgage after years of hard work, only to discover that the cost of insuring your home now rivals some of the largest household expenses you have ever faced. For families who have endured decades of storms and rebuilding efforts, the rising cost of insurance has become a challenge that even experience and resilience cannot easily overcome. As ownership costs continue climbing, the local housing market has become increasingly saturated with properties for sale. Recent housing market data indicates that active listings on the island have risen sharply compared with the previous year, as owners of second homes and investment properties reconsider whether maintaining those properties still makes financial sense. At the same time, home prices have begun to soften. Market reports suggest that median sale prices have fallen significantly from their recent highs, reflecting the growing imbalance between supply and demand. Driving along the coastal roads today, it's difficult not to notice the increasing number of for sale signs standing in front of beach houses and vacation properties. Homes that once attracted eager buyers are now spending far longer on the market, with some remaining unsold for months. The short-term rental industry, which previously helped support much of the local economy, is also facing increasing pressure. Number 3. Katy. Heading back toward the western edge of the Houston metropolitan area, we arrive in a suburb that spent decades building a reputation as one of the premier destinations for families seeking highly rated schools, large homes, and a traditional suburban lifestyle. Katy became synonymous with expansive master-planned communities, extensive retail development, and some of the state's most celebrated high school sports programs. But after years of extraordinary growth, signs are emerging that this once booming housing market is facing significant challenges. The scale of residential development throughout western Houston has been enormous. During the housing boom, developers acquired vast stretches of prairie land and rapidly transformed them into sprawling subdivisions containing thousands of newly constructed homes. The assumption was that strong population growth and continued migration into Texas would support this expansion for years to come. Today, however, some of those assumptions are being tested. According to housing market research published by Zonda Home, portions of the western Houston region have accumulated some of the largest inventories of newly built homes in the country. Driving through certain neighborhoods, it's possible to travel for extended distances through recently completed developments while encountering surprisingly little activity, creating a striking contrast with the intense construction activity of only a few years ago. Many homeowners who purchased during the height of the market are now facing a much different economic reality. Data from the Houston Association of Realtors indicates that single-family home sales in some parts of the region have declined substantially, while the number of homes available for sale has increased dramatically. At the same time, home prices have begun to retreat from their peak levels, with median values in some areas hovering near the $400,000 range. For homeowners who purchased at elevated prices, the combination of slower sales and declining values has created understandable concerns about long-term financial stability. Housing prices are only one part of the equation. Many communities in the area are also subject to municipal utility district taxes and other local assessments, which can significantly increase the total cost of home ownership. According to information published by the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts, the combined burden of county taxes, school district taxes, and local utility assessments can result in property tax obligations that are among the highest in the state. Number 2. Midland. Traveling deep into the wide-open landscapes of West Texas brings us to a city whose fortunes have long been tied to one of the most volatile industries in the world: oil and gas. When energy prices surge, Midland transforms into a bustling economic powerhouse, fueled by high wages, rapid investment, and a constant flow of workers seeking opportunity. But when the energy market slows, the effects can ripple through the entire community with remarkable speed. Today, many signs suggest that Midland is once again facing the difficult realities of the boom and bust cycle that has defined the region for generations. During periods of high oil prices, developers have historically responded with aggressive construction, operating under the assumption that strong demand for housing will continue indefinitely. Entire neighborhoods have been built to accommodate engineers, contractors, executives, and workers connected to the energy industry. However, when market conditions change, those same developments can quickly become oversupplied. According to housing market data published by the Texas A&M Real Estate Center, active housing inventory across the Permian Basin region has increased significantly, with listings rising by more than 40% in some areas. Residential developments that were once expected to fill rapidly now contain homes that remain vacant long after construction has been completed. For many residents, this volatility creates a profound sense of financial uncertainty. Market data reported by Zillow indicates that median listing prices remain near $360,000. However, actual transaction prices have faced increasing downward pressure as sellers compete to attract a shrinking pool of buyers. The situation can be especially difficult for households that purchased homes during periods of peak economic optimism. Imagine taking on a large mortgage based on the expectation of continued high earnings in the oil industry, only to face reduced hours, layoffs, or a sudden slowdown in energy production activity. One of the defining characteristics of Midland's economy is how quickly conditions can change. Employment levels, housing demand, and consumer confidence often move in close alignment with developments in the energy sector. When oil activity slows, the effects can be felt almost immediately throughout the broader community. The housing market reflects that reality. According to data from major real estate platforms, homes in the area are remaining on the market substantially longer than they did during the height of the boom, with average selling times extending beyond 65 days. At the same time, many sellers have responded by implementing significant price reductions in an effort to complete a sale before market conditions deteriorate further. Number 1. Austin. Finally, we reach what the narrator frames as the center of gravity for the recent Texas housing cycle: Austin, a city that only a few years ago stood at the very top of the American real estate boom. During that period, it attracted an influx of tech executives, high-profile buyers, celebrities, and thousands of newcomers relocating from coastal markets, all drawn by the promise of opportunity, culture, and a famously unconventional identity. At the height of the surge, competition for homes reached extreme levels. Rapid bidding wars became the norm, and sellers often found themselves in a position of unusual leverage as demand far outpaced supply. Today, however, the market dynamics look very different. What was once described as a booming expansion has shifted into a sharp correction. Across the metro area, large numbers of newly built homes on the city's outskirts now sit vacant, reflecting a significant imbalance between supply and demand. According to data from the Austin Board of Realtors, housing inventory in the region has increased dramatically, contributing to a substantial backlog of unsold properties. During the boom, developers moved aggressively, constructing extensive residential communities in anticipation of sustained tech sector growth and continued inward migration. Many of those expectations assumed a long-term expansion of remote work and local hiring, that would keep absorption rates high. As conditions changed, particularly with layoffs, hiring slowdowns, and corporate relocations, some of that projected demand did not fully materialize. The result is visible in many of these newly completed neighborhoods, where rows of finished homes remain unoccupied, representing a clear reversal from the intense scarcity conditions seen just a few years earlier. Market data from Redfin indicates that median home prices in the Austin metro area have declined by approximately 18% from their peak levels. For many recent buyers, that shift has translated into a significant loss of paper equity, particularly for those who purchased during the height of the market frenzy. In some cases, homes that were purchased near $700,000 have seen their estimated value fall closer to the mid-$500,000 range within a relatively short time frame. At the same time, data from Zillow suggests that a large portion of active listings in the area have undergone price reductions as sellers attempt to adjust to more competitive conditions. Beyond housing prices, the broader affordability picture has also been shaped by long-standing pressures. Rising rents, increased property taxes, and the cost of maintaining homeownership in a rapidly expanding metro area have contributed to ongoing displacement of lower-income residents, including many of the service workers and creative communities that help define the city's cultural identity. As the market cools, even higher-income professionals in the tech sector have faced new uncertainties tied to layoffs, shifting work policies, and changing corporate footprints. Combined with persistent traffic congestion, strained infrastructure, and ongoing social challenges, these factors have contributed to a noticeable cooling in enthusiasm among some residents.